This is Women Driving the Industry with Bridget Fitzpatrick.
Hello, everyone. Today on Women Driving the Industry, we are so excited to welcome someone whose journey epitomizes dedication, innovation, and leadership, starting her career over 13 years ago as a receptionist at a small-town Ford dealership in South Texas. She's quickly recognized the potential of internet marketing and ascended to the role of internet marketing manager within the just 90 days of her career. And her passion led her to Minnesota, where she played a pivotal role in building BDC strategies and enhancing digital operations for prominent automotive groups. And today, she serves as marketing director for DeMontrond Auto Group in Houston, Texas. And there she oversees digital marketing and strategy operations across 12 dealerships and 4 RV dealerships. She was selected as a 2022 Automotive News 40 Under 40, and she serves as the Vice President of Women of Color Automotive Network. Please join me in welcoming Ashley Cavazos. Thank you for joining us, Ashley.
Hi, thank you so much for having me. Gosh, hearing an intro like that makes you realize, where has the time gone?
Right, you've been doing a lot over the last 13 years.
Definitely so much.
Now, I did talk a little bit about your journey, but I would love to hear it in your words. Can you talk to us about how you got into automotive?
Absolutely. It's really interesting. So I grew up in radio and TV, actually. My grandfather was one of the first Spanish FM radio stations in the country in Corpus Christi, Texas. And so I've just always been around people and community growing up in that, and happened upon a receptionist position while I was in college. Was like, okay, this sounds like a good stable job rather than, some of the retail stuff that you could find when you're a college student. Was told many times just over my years of customer service, like, you should try automotive. And I'm like, no, who wants to work at a car dealership? But honestly, once I got in there, I quickly saw how I could apply a lot of what I've learned just growing up and working with my family and our radio stations into the dealership, into marketing and social media. Quickly just fell in love with how fast paced and challenging the industry was. It's been a journey, definitely been a journey, that's for sure.
Now, when you were just getting started, was there a pivotal moment where you thought, okay, automotive's it, I see a long-term career here, or did you think about maybe being in radio? What was the process there?
Yeah, I honestly thought it was a temporary stop. I was going to school for marketing. I did not even think that there was any kind of opportunity for marketing in automotive until I really started digging in. I started attending webinars because I knew nothing about the industry. So I'm attending these webinars from, different website providers at the time, getting embraced just with the industry and the community that was around at that time. I mean, this was, gosh, 2010, 2011, right? And so things were very different back then from an internet marketing perspective. But I just was like, okay, maybe there's something here. Maybe there's a place for me in the dealership and in the industry. And definitely did not see it long term. Definitely did not see myself moving to Minnesota. Just, over 2 years later, like my now husband, but boyfriend at the time, packed up our 2 cars and our 2 dogs and sold everything we could and moved 2 days after Christmas. Drove up to Minnesota, and my first day on the job was January 2nd. And
Oh my
like I grew up on the Gulf of Corpus Christi, right? So going from that to Minnesota, everybody's like, what are you doing here? It's the middle of winter.
A little bit of a culture shock, I'm sure.
Definitely.
Yeah,
So
right.
it was not something I honestly saw. And then I remember walking into this dealership and seeing a woman new car sales manager who'd been there for many years. And this was a top Mazda dealership. It was like maybe, I think, like top 10 or 12 in the country. And I'm just like, here's this awesome like woman doing it. And I didn't see a lot of that in Texas. So it was really cool.
Oh, that's awesome. I'm sure that helped to make you more comfortable jumping into the dealership world for sure. What were some of the challenges that you faced early on in your career?
I think definitely self-doubt. That's probably one of the biggest ones. I really often question myself, like, what am I doing here? You talk about imposter syndrome, right? And just wondering, like, can I do this? Like, why did they put me in this seat? And so I think just getting past the self-doubt and questioning myself, especially as a woman in automotive, as a Latina in automotive,
Hmm.
a lot of times you're the only one in the room.
Yeah,
And it's easy to really get in your head about if you should be there or not.
definitely. Definitely. Did you have any role models that helped in your career?
Absolutely. Had some really great people, especially when I moved to Minnesota. I had a mentor, a general manager who really saw the potential in me before I even saw it in myself. I knew I had moved to Minnesota to help grow with this automotive group, was hoping to have that opportunity to grow with them. And within 6 months, they were like, we're opening up a new Mazda point. We want you to go be the BDC manager and help build this dealership into what it can be with the possibilities. And he just was really great. The general manager at that initial dealership and the one I went to open the new point with both just really gave me a shot, I think, when maybe most wouldn't. I talk to him now and again, and he runs a dealer group in California, and half of his GMs are women. And I like praise him for this. He has 6 stores and 3 of them are women. You don't see that very often. And what I love about what he says is I just put the right person in the spot. And so that feels really special to know that like he saw me and really gave me that confidence that I didn't quite have in myself just yet.
That's so great. And the more I talk to women in the industry, I hear these stories about the men who are helping too. And I think that's so great because, like you said, when you started, you didn't see, you saw a familiar face. You saw someone that looked like you in the dealership, and it made you feel more comfortable. So what this dealer's doing, your mentor is doing, is huge. And starting to hear more stories about that, and it's we're making progress, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, we need to, right? Like, we need to know that there is somebody in the room that will
Mhm.
speak up for you when you can't, right? You're not
Exactly.
always going to be in that room, but who's going to be your cheerleader? I think we've seen that quote constantly as women, right? Like, find your tribe who's going to help,
Yeah.
cheerlead for you when you can't. But in an industry that's so predominantly male, we really do need our male allies. And I've been really fortunate to have some great ones that have been in my corner and really helped me, give me that shot that maybe others didn't. Even coming to DeMontrond and my team here and the support I get from them is really empowering.
That's so great. Love hearing that. Are there any particular skills or qualities that you think are critical being a woman in automotive?
I think definitely adaptability, resilience, and growth are
Yeah.
probably like 3 things that come to mind. We have to be quick to adapt. It's very fast paced, as you know, right, and as we all know. But we have to be able to pivot and embrace the challenges. I think also just taking them as lessons.
Yeah.
There are times where it's not always great to be a woman in automotive. You're sometimes feeling like your voice isn't heard. And so you have to be really resilient in that. And also making sure that you find a support team, whether it's other women who have been before you. I've been really fortunate with WOCAN and just other great women in automotive who I've crossed paths with that support me that I can text when I'm having one of those days. And so having a tribe, men or women that can really help you, and knowing that you have them to just bring you up on those days that you need it, right? It's not always absolutely terrible. I think sometimes we get that bad rap of like, oh, it's so there are definitely challenges,
Yeah.
and I'm not going to diminish or minimize any of them. um, but you have to just be adaptable and resilient to it, because
Right.
I think even for yourself, myself, I don't think we would be here today if we weren't.
That's right. That's right. I find I take things personally, and I did especially early on. I started about the same time you did in the automotive industry, and over the years, I've learned to just not take everything so personal because sometimes people haven't been in rooms where there are women in the dealership, and they just might not know. So instead of taking it so personal like I used to, I'm I'm working on that, and I think I'm getting a lot better at not taking it so personal, but that's another thing that, yeah, not
Yeah,
to take things
that's such a
personally.
great point. I mean, especially because men's brains work a little
They
differently
do.
than ours, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes they're just like straight to the point,
Uh-huh.
whereas we need a little like, okay, like let's, finesse our wording a little bit. And they're just like, let's go, let's grind, let's hustle. And they may say something that they don't realize is as maybe personal to us as it could be. And so, yeah, that's such a great point.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. What do you think, other than hiring other women, what do you think dealerships can do to attract and retain females in the industry?
I think it really is with culture. That's one of the things I talk about in a lot of different settings and conversations that we have of how do we move forward, how do we attract, retain, promote more women. And it really starts with your culture. Having an environment where women can feel supported and heard is huge. Making sure that we feel that we are valued. I think a lot of times we feel undervalued or just not sure where we stand in that, but making sure that there's transparency and flexible work schedules. Like
Mhm.
a lot of times we are mom and wife, right? And we want to have our career. And so just having that, knowing that there's flexibility there. But one of the big things I think has really helped, and I think it applies to women, but also a lot of the generation that we have coming up in the industry is knowing like your leadership development plan. If I want to grow, what does that look like for me? And having a set plan, having one-on-ones with my leadership, and understanding what can I do to be better? Because we're always striving to be better. We're always working hard. And I think that that conversation can really help slow down what a lot of us maybe encounter as burnout,
Mhm.
because we always feel like we have to work harder and smarter and longer.
Yeah,
And
right.
so sometimes those one-on-one conversations really help, like, hey, you're on the right path and this is going well. And, I think that will really, really be a huge game changer if you're not doing that already to help more attract more women and retain more women.
Great advice. I think that those check-ins are so important, when you have those one-on-ones, and so you can have a candid conversation about what you're doing great and what you can improve on. So that's great advice there. Now, you are doing some very important work with the Women of Color Automotive Network, WOCON, and you have a new role there. Can you talk to us about what you're doing there?
Yeah, super excited to talk about WOCAN. So, WOCAN started in 2020. There's a lot happening that year for us and for amazing women in the industry. Started this nonprofit for women of color in automotive. And if you think about women as a whole are about 23% of the industry, women of color are 6%.
Jeez.
And so you don't realize that, but then you look at our also look at the other side of it. What are our customers and our clients look like? And is there that balance? We talk about it for women, but what are we doing for the women of color? How do we make sure we support them? And so that's a lot of what WOCAN is. It's a safe place to talk about your experiences, help have somebody that you can work through some of that, right? I have many text threads with some of our members, and we're just like, oh gosh, like I encountered this, how do I handle it? There's even, we talk about just how you have to shift sometimes, right? Like maybe I feel like I'm Latina and I shouldn't have, and this is as crazy as it sounds, like there was a time where I thought that, but where I shouldn't wear the red lipstick and the big hoop earrings, and I need to be as professional as I can and not give any, not make people see me more than they already do when they look at the color of my skin. But WOCAN has grown to over 1,000 members. We have some amazing sponsors from some of the OEMs in the industry and some top banks as well, and a lot of great vendor partners that have come and supported us because we are a nonprofit. Everything is fundraising, and we want to make sure that we're sending women to conferences because a lot of times they don't get to go to these events and network or educate themselves. We had a really cool program last year that we're getting ready to kick off again this year, but it was a leadership academy. We had over 50 women sponsored through this leadership academy from Solera, and it was really cool just to give them a space to like get this leadership training that Solera offers to our members at no cost. Um, and so that's the kind of stuff we're doing with WOCAN this year. Super excited. We will be hosting a breakfast at a SoduCon in May. And then we also have our annual event that is at the NAMAD conference as well, which will be in Las Vegas. And so that's kind of what we're gearing up on top of working with Chase, one of our sponsors. We're doing a finance workshop. So a lot of times we don't learn financial literacy, right? What do I do with my money? How do I invest it properly? Or you think about that month to month life of the paycheck of waiting for your bonus to come, and by the time you know it, 2 weeks later, you're already out of money, and you're like, how do I make this last the whole month? Because you're trying to just sustain all the bills and everything that comes. So we want to teach our members some of the things that we maybe didn't learn growing up, and it's not always just putting your money in the mattress, right, and saving.
Right.
Like, what can we do to be smarter and just build that wealth for ourselves? So there's a number of projects in the works right now. But I'm honored to be vice president, to work along Carrie Wise, if you know Carrie Wise, with
Very well, yes. She's great.
AutoFi. So I've learned a lot from her. She's been one of my mentors over the past years, and just really honored to serve the industry in a way that I can give back to so many who have done something for me.
That's great. You guys are doing such great work. I'm seeing a difference in what you're doing, and the fact that you're building this community of women that need each other and can lean on each other is so important. So keep up the good work. If there's anything we can do to help the efforts, of course, here at CBT, we're more than happy to help.
Thank you so much.
So now let's look ahead to the next 5, 10 years. What would you like to see? What changes would you like to see in the auto industry? I mean, I know some
These are
obvious ones, but
Yeah, I mean, obviously we'd like to see more women, right? But I'd really like to see more women in leadership and executive roles. A lot of times, admin, HR, marketing, but how do we get more women in fixed ops and variable ops, and see them at the manager desk, right? See them as, at service advisors or service managers in the shops. I'd really like to see more diversity in that sense. I myself started as a receptionist, right? And receptionist that's usually the always a go-to receptionist,
yeah,
BDC,
right.
HR, right? Accounting, but I'd like to just see more women growing into executive roles and just continue to climb. I think we've done a lot of work over the past few years. It's great to see the community across all spectrums for women, but just seeing how we can continue to work together in that sense.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. Now, let's go back to when you first started. If you could give yourself advice, what advice would you give yourself back then?
Oh gosh. Um, Probably to trust myself more,
Mhm. Yeah,
trust my instincts, right? Like sometimes you would have something that's like in the back of your mind, like, oh, I should say this or I should do this, and then you question it, and I don't think our male counterparts do that, right? They kind of just go.
right.
And so I think for myself, my advice would be to just trust myself more. I'm way more capable than I maybe think I am, and I see that every day. And I still question myself. My husband drives him crazy because I'll be like replaying the week, and he'll just tell me like, look at where you've gotten today. Like,
Yeah,
why do you do that? And I think that's something that's always going to be with us, and maybe that's what makes us better.
yeah,
um, but I wish I had done that a lot sooner.
yeah. Great advice for anyone watching, for sure. Now, where do you see yourself in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh.
Where do you want to go from here?
That's a tough one. I joined DeMontrond. It'll be 2 years in June, and I think there's so much to dig in there that I'm excited to see what the next few years look like, and how I continue to grow, the department and that team and the brand. It's really it's really tough. I've been asked this question and I don't really know how to answer it. I think it's, from a WOCAN perspective, I can tell you, like,
Yeah.
I see myself really supporting them, more, just seeing where we can grow that and giving back to the industry.
Yeah.
But from a career perspective, I have so much I want to give still that I'm still trying to figure out how to lay it out.
Yeah.
And it's
Yeah.
it may be rambling a little bit on that piece, but it's really tough to say because I feel even though it hasn't been 2 years, I feel like I'm still like getting my feet in here and understanding everything there is because I'm marketing director, but I'm also working on training and coaching the teams in digital performance
Yes.
and working with the variable ops team in that sense. So there's a lot to dig in that I feel like it's just there's a lot of opportunity there. I'm happy to be back in Texas. I was in Minnesota for 10 and a half years, and so I'm super excited to be back in Texas with my family. But just digging in from a marketing perspective, I think there's so much happening in the industry tech wise. So career wise, I see myself really like exploring more into the CDP world and applying more AI. In our jobs. I've used it for a long time, but just seeing how that continues to grow. NADA was really interesting and some of the tech that's out there. It's such a shame that we had the snowstorm that we
Right.
did because there were a lot of great booths out there that I was just like mind blown at what has transpired over the past year that I'm excited to dig in. So it's hard to think about like the next 5 to 10 years because I'm still like, oh my gosh, there's so much I want to get done right now.
Well, you've had a very impressive career over the last decade. I can't wait to see where you go over the next decade, and I'm sure you'll be at the top. So really appreciate you joining us today. Appreciate all the advice that you've given. I think you're really going to help a lot of people watching, and that means so much. So we really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, absolutely.
Thanks for watching Women Driving the Industry with Bridget Fitzpatrick.